Hampton, owner of lifestyle and fashion brand Tagged Up Apparel, listening to my guy Decal on E.I.T.H.R Radio. What's up, Davey?
This is Henry from New York, and I listen to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with my homie Decal.
You're listening to the E.I.T.H.R podcast with your host, Decal.
And happy hump day, ladies and gentlemen. It's your boy Decal here, hosting the E.I.T.H.R podcast from the GNS HQ here in Sacramento, California. Happy hump day, y'all. I hope everyone is enjoying this middle of the week. And this is the first episode of the podcast to be on a Wednesday. So we're going to christen this new tradition the right way, and I just want to say thank you guys very, very much for tuning in. Appreciate you all. So we've got a lot of feedback from people about how much they appreciate and everything that they even gained from listening to the podcast. And so I just want to take the time to say thank you very much to those folks who reached out to me and kind of just gave compliment on what they've heard. This is the another outlet for me to express how I feel and get points across. And anyone who's heard this podcast before, they know that the whole purpose of this thing is to help digest some of the topics that we as a society have the hardest time in communicating and understanding and getting out of our own way on trying to translate and decipher what is what. Because again, we live in a society where everybody is right. What I have to say matters, and whatever is on your mind, fuck you. And there's a planet full of people, at least in America, of people who think that way. So we try to make sure we cut through all that. So I want to give a shout out to, first and foremost, everybody working in the food and service industry. Listen, man, I've worked in the food industry for a few years, as a host, as a server, as security, retail, when customer service was actually customer service. It's a lot different now. And sometimes people in the industry are extremely overlooked and underappreciated. I remember the first time I was shown, quote unquote appreciation from a customer. I was 16 years old working at Target in San Leandro. It's now Walmart right there on Hesperian. I think Hesperian and Llewellyn. And right across the street from the Rasputins. Out there, San Leandro, San Lorenzo borderline. And I'm cashiering, and a lady asked me how I was doing. I'll never forget this. She asked me how I was doing. I was like, oh, I'm cool. I'm a little hungry because, I didn't get my break, but, you got to do what you got to do. And I rung her up, and she left, And she came back, and she brought me Jack in the Box. It was like a sourdough Jack meal. And it wasn't a gesture of, flirting or promiscuous intention. She legitimately brought me some food because she saw that I was working. I was young and I was hungry, but I was trying to do my job. And was the first experience of being with a customer showing appreciation to someone who's just like, damn, that I will never forget that as long as my memory works. So shout out to everyone in the food industry. Shout out to everybody in the service industry, man, because it seems more and more people are starting to get a little more entitled and opinionated about what they think should be the standard of whatever it is, despite what policies and procedure says, despite what morality says, despite whatever the situation is. And you take a lot of flack. There was a video, I'm not going to get too much into it, but there was a video at a dollar store, a Dollar General, I believe. Customer kind of went off on the sales associate, and it got to a physical altercation, and the sales associate, she was getting beat up by the customer. And so the customer, talking a lot of mess. And so she got up, walked outside. And the customer kind of followed her a little bit to the door and was talking, and you see her shuffle back. Long story short, the customer went and got something out of her car and shot the customer in the store. Somebody put it on social media, which is crazy to me. So instead of stopping or trying to de-escalate the situation, which I understand, you want to stay out of it, it's not your business, I get it. I'm just not too keen on grabbing my cell phone and watching a cat fight, And then, like I said, she went and got something out of her car and shot the lady and stood over her, and the guys left. I don't know, what happened after that, if she, left the store or whatever, but everybody's stressed out right now for their own particular reason. Everybody's got some problems going on, so I gotta pay some homage to those people. Stay strong, man. We it takes a village. So if any of you guys out there know somebody who's working in the service industry and they apparently seem overworked and underappreciated, be the change in the world that you want to see, and bring them something to eat, something to snack on, maybe something to drink, just a gratuity, right? You never know how much that can change somebody's day. Just a complete stranger showing them some appreciation. That could be a single dad trying to get it together, and he doesn't know how to fix whatever's going on, and that little gesture could make both people feel good. But I know for sure it'll make you feel good knowing that you impacted somebody's life on a positive note, and kind of like we spoke in the last episode, try not to expect anything back in return. Just the fact to know that you can help somebody else. That's huge. On the podcast, we like to do what's called a motivational suggestion. Kind of just give suggestions. I never give advice because people don't like to take that shit, right? So I give a suggestion, and usually people are more prone to following suggestions than advice because, hey, I'm the one going through the problem, but I still know more than you. So a suggestion for some of us is to make a list or a chart of what it is that you need to get through the day. The 1% of America that has, all the money, they write down their goals. Okay, they write them down and they follow them each day. It could be 3 goals, it could be 5 goals, it could be 12 goals. One thing that I've learned from reading is a method of charting is you have 3 columns. You have an A, you have a B, you have a C. A, priority. This is it. This needed to get done yesterday, and I got 3 minutes before I lose everything to get this done. So this is like high alert priority number 1, 2, and 3, right? That's your A column. Your B column, okay, this is something I can get done throughout the day. It needs to be done today, but there's no pressure of getting done now. But it needs to be done before I go to bed. C, this shit gets done whenever it gets done. And I can almost guarantee you, when you do it that way, you'll realize that you'll have 2 to 3 things in your A, 1 to 2, maybe 3 to 4 in your B, and 12 in your C. but you'll see that 12 in your mind, and because it's more than what's in your A or B, you figure that's more important. And then you wind up 1/4, 1/3, half-assing everything. So even though you did a lot, you didn't do anything at all at the same time. So nothing got completed today, and now that rolls over until tomorrow. I know there's some people out there who don't like doing lists of what to do, because who knows? One person will create a list and they will misplace the list. Somebody would do a list and then start doing lists of other lists, and now they don't know which list to prioritize. I had one person who didn't like doing lists because when she realized what needed to be done, she realized how much of a day she had to do nothing. And I guess for this particular person, having a frantic day keeps her busy. It keeps her doing stuff. Doesn't want to burn the midday oil. I don't get that kind of mindset, but some people don't want to just lay around and be vegetables, probably because they see people who do nothing and they feel they don't want to relate to nothing. So being constantly busy is productive. Cool. I get that. Not for me, but I get that. So, something like that. But so for the people who are new to the E.I.T.H.R podcast, we like to start everything off with shout outs and motivational speech. And we like to get into things that's topics usually in the world. It may not be in your world, maybe in my world, maybe in somebody else's world. And we try to tackle them and address them from different perspectives, from different angles, so that way it's easy to digest. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. And there's a couple of things I want to talk about. And when we get back from this break of some sponsors and people that we're trying to help support their business, we'll address that.
Most t-shirts are simply cool to look at or look in. Well, so are ours. But ours also aim to send a message. They aim to put a name on obstacles that once stood in your way and aren't there anymore. Struggles that you turned into successes and crushed. You made it look easy. Shop at mile.today. Mile.today. www.mile.today. A GNS collection.
This is Dave in Auburn, California, and I'm listening to the E.I.T.H.R with Decal.
All right, so one of the things I want to talk about is some things that that's kind of been on my mind for a while. And these are topics that we've talked about with people, or at least I've talked about with people. And sometimes, man, you just can't get through to everybody. And usually, people who just don't want to change their perspective, it's really talking to a brick wall. They don't want to understand anything else other than whatever it is that they believe. So you kind of just cut your ties and walk away from those folks. But one thing I do want to bring up is, who are the 5 people that you admire the most, right? I believe it was Warren Buffett who said, show me the 5 people that you admire the most, and I'll show you where you're going to be at in life, right? And a lot of us, we don't necessarily have a specific group of people we admire. We admire a whole gamut of folks, right? We have a whole top 300, and we kind of just admire those people. Well, if you narrow it down to the 5 people that kind of relate more to what it is that you're trying to accomplish, whether it's self-improvement, fitness, diet, fashion, music, motivational speaking, podcasting, just being a better employee, being a better parent, being a better partner. If you can kind of, your top 5 of those most influential, you tend to do more of what it is that they do in their daily life. Because those are your influencers. Those are the people that inspire and motivate. Those are the people who your subconscious will eventually start to guide you into being more like. So, for me, top 5 people that I would say influence me or musicians, entertainers, but they're also in the world of business. So, no one, not in any particular order, 1 through 5, but here are 5 people. One is Mr. Earl Stevens, E.I.T.H.R, right? I remember growing up as a kid, I couldn't stand him. I didn't like him. I didn't like him. I didn't like his style. I wasn't used to it. I wasn't accustomed to it. I was at a young age one of these people who followed the trend. Like what was hot, and I wanted to be part of the what is hot group. And my eldest nephew is the one who put me on to him. So I knew of him, I just didn't like him. And so in 1995, when his album dropped, in a major way, and a lot of you guys may have heard of Sprinkle Me and all these different songs, One Love and all these things, that's kind of when I started to be more drawn to him and his style. But again, it was because it was popular. That's why I initially kind of swayed towards him. But as I started to follow his music as I got older, I realized he's educating people in a fun way. And a lot of people to this day don't like his style because it's goofy, it's not serious, it's kind of just weird to some people. And I tried to explain to them, it's the uniqueness of his style that sticks out more than anybody else. So, even though his style is a certain way that you don't like it, you'll remember it because it's nothing like it out there. So, this man in the music industry, independent, he was the first independent artist to establish a record label. Master P was the second, but he did it on a more global scale, if I remember correctly. But he definitely made me look at the independent game on how to do your own. So now you have E.I.T.H.R Tequila, you have the Earl Stevens Select Wine. He's now in the food industry. So he took what was good and invested it over here because you can't do music forever, right? So he branched out into the alcohol and food industry, which I'm kind of looking at that blueprint like, okay, he has, more than one well to draw his water from, right? Okay, cool. So that was that. Master P, as I said, Percy Miller out of Calio Projects in Louisiana, came to Richmond, California. Same thing, record label. It was the largest, at one point I want to say it was like the largest independent record label in the world was No Limit Records. And No Limit Records in the mid to late 90s, damn, I think they had like 20, God, I'm sure I'm off on this, I have to double check, but I think they pushed out like 20 something albums in 1 month of different artists. Like, that's ridiculous, right? And then he got into sports agencies, he got into a clothing line, he got into film. I mean, he was diversifying himself as well back then, right? Now he doesn't do the music industry as much anymore. I think he shut down that division of his company, but he's still diversifying. Now he's in the food industry as well. And he's giving back to kids, and I think he's doing a scholarship or something like that. So E.I.T.H.R and Master P were like definitely my top 2 on what they did. For it's just diversifying. Another one is Sean Diddy Combs, right? Puff Daddy. If you remember him from back in the 90s when I first started. Because anything that Bad Boy Records put their name on, it just took off. It didn't matter what it was. So, for him to have a brand that was globally known, and then he linked up and basically runs Ciroc. And I don't know how many people buy Ciroc today, but it has a large influence from what he has done with that brand. And it's just thinking outside the box and being something that at one point did not exist, and you create your own lane, and that's the best lane to be in, is the one that you create for yourself. So another person that I happen to admire, again, is another entertainer musician, LeBron James. Right, LeBron James. He is the first athlete billionaire of this era. I believe Jordan's a billionaire, but he is, I think, the first active playing billionaire. Which, from a kid from Akron, Ohio, who is in his late 30s. And if you think about it, despite what you hear about LeBron James, this man married his high school sweetheart. They have like 2-3 kids together. No drama, nothing really to attach this dude to that would tarnish a reputation, that would tarnish his name, that embarrasses his family. None of that. And rumor is that he wants to play in the league long enough to where he plays with his sons, and I think that's pretty dope. I'm not a LeBron fan as necessarily as a Laker fan, but I'm a fan as a human being, and I think that's pretty dope. And he's not afraid to say things that need to be said. Do I agree with everything he says? Of course not. But the fact that he understands he has a platform to use, and I think a lot of people are upset because the platform that he chooses doesn't always agree with the platform that they want him to, so therefore they want him to shut up and dribble. But if anyone had the platform, they would do the exact same thing that he's doing, which is interesting because, hypocrisy is really huge for some people. Number 5, Jay-Z. Hove, again, got into the music business at 26 years old. Industry said that he was too old to be in the music business. And now he's setting such a trend in the industry that juggernauts like the NFL is partnering up with him to do more for social injustices. And he's using his platform, but more from behind the scenes. And he's doing a lot of work overseas in other countries where, unfortunately, you don't hear too much about in this country. But he and his wife, you talk about a power couple, and their children. You talk about leaving a legacy. This man is doing the first thing in his family to ever do, which was leave something behind for the next. So it started with him. So those are my top 5 people that I would look at as like, damn. Honorable mention would be Dr. Dre, because of where he started at in the music industry of DJing and nightclubs, so on and so forth, and just the classic Straight Outta Compton album that he says he did in 6 weeks, which is unheard of because there are some songs that don't even get completed in 6 weeks. But this man made a classic hip hop album in 6 weeks. It's ridiculous. And he was like in his early 20s at that time. And the scary part that I can imagine is because there was nothing like that type of music, there was nothing like that type of production, there was nothing like that type of style at that time in the 80s. So it was a lot of trial by error and feet to the fire. So he innovated a whole genre of music, right? So he's there, you know. You gotta pay respect when respect is due, even though some people don't like that. Giving respect to people that they may not admire, I can separate liking what you do from liking you as an individual, you know. So, you know, like I said, man, you got to give credit where credit is due. But who are your top five? Who are the top five people that you admire the most, who have an influence on what it is that you're trying to do in your life, and that's getting you where you want it to be? You know, who are they? Next thing I want to talk about, which is going to lead into the bigger topic of the day, is if something starts off one way and is believed to be a certain way, can history change it? What it means in moving forward, or must it be rewritten to represent its preferred new meaning? So, if something's been established from the past, right? And in the past, it's always been believed to be a certain way. Can folks reinterpret that and create a new meaning for it, despite it being written the opposite way? Or, to make sure that there's no confusion, rewrite it. Just do a whole ass new version of it. I asked that question because when you look at one of the biggest issues that this country has is the Second Amendment, right? The right to bear arms. And certain people don't want the government taking their guns away, which I understand and I agree with, right? It's in place to make sure that the government kind of stays in their place and you're able to defend yourself against, you know, the threats of your life or your family or your home, so on and so forth. But the Second Amendment says the right to bear arms. There's been a lot of murders of people because police think they saw a gun. Well, if you can be executed, if you can be killed, if you can be murdered because law enforcement believes they saw a weapon, do you really have the right to bear arms? Is that Second Amendment for you? You kind of got to decode certain things, because here's the reason why I asked that question again. When the Constitution and certain laws were written, ladies and gentlemen, they were written at a certain time by a certain group with a certain mindset. Understand that. They were written at a time where classes were divided a little bit differently. Rights for people not exactly like they are here in the 21st century. And the way the status quo was doesn't necessarily fly in today's world. But that's when the law was written. Then. So as time progresses, we've kind of grandfathered in these new revisions and adapted to new lifestyles and changes and molded it to the way the world is now. But when you look at the letter of the law, these new reforms that we kind of added ourselves, these unwritten rules, if you will, the legal system doesn't necessarily have to acknowledge them, because the scapegoat is, well, it's not written here. Yes, we included this, and this into this, but if you read it, it's nowhere there. So technically, we don't have to honor it if we don't want to honor it. And in a few episodes before, I would talk about you have two different officers. You have the spirit of the law, and you have the letter of the law. And I think recently a lot of people have been using letter of the law to make certain changes, where a lot of us have been living by spirit of the law, or spirit of a policy, or spirit of the game. But the letter of the law, the letter of the policy, the letter of the game does not say this, right? So again, should these laws, should these policies, should these guidelines be rewritten to match today's time? If anyone's ever seen the movie Training Day, there was a scene where Denzel Washington and E.I.T.H.R is sitting in the car, and Denzel's talking to him, and he says, to protect the sheep, you have to catch a wolf, and it takes a wolf to catch a wolf. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we as the people are viewed as sheep, and we're ran by wolves. Whether this wolf represents a side that you relate to, it's irrelevant, because a wolf is a wolf, and the last thing a wolf is going to do is sacrifice itself for somebody else. The wolf is going to kick in instinct of survival, right? So, what would you want to happen? Rewriting these laws and policies to adapt to today's world, or keep them where they are and kind of play the Russian roulette game of which person do I get that's going to determine which way this sways for me? Very interesting. It's very interesting. I guess depending on where you live will determine your answer. But I've kind of traveled to different cities, towns, and different states, and I can almost say the higher you are in the tax bracket, the less presence you see of law enforcement. So typically these folks that live in that area, they can get away with more because there's nobody to say anything. Where the lower tax bracket, there's a higher presence of law enforcement. And color has necessarily nothing to do with crime. Crime is a poverty thing, right? So you have police in a very high concentrated poverty neighborhood. Everybody's going to be looked at a certain way. Everybody's going to be profiled. Some people more than others, but compared to. So again, I think, feel, and believe that if we're going to be a progressive country, these laws probably need to be looked at and revised. But again, if you revise them, I feel that's going to change the legal system to where less arrests may possibly be made, because then you start seeing legal things that are more viewed as criminal. They might give you more as medical, psychological, emotional. So that's something to think about, something for you to ponder on. Maybe you at the water cooler at work, driving your car in traffic. But think about that. Which would you want? I think it's a fair assessment. For those of you guys who are starting off a business, for you guys are starting a brand new, are you in the city that you want to be in? If not, where would you want to be located? Again, like in the beginning, a few weeks ago, I said I wanted to be back in the Sacramento area. I did. I wanted to be back here because of the location. Reno, Tahoe, the Bay Area. I mean, it's right here. Not to mention Yosemite's not that far from here. The ocean is not that far from here. The mountains aren't that far from here. So you can go surfing, you can go hiking, you can go skiing. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? We got it all. Where do you want to be at? If you could pick a place that you wanted to be, whether for work or for whatever, where? And why aren't you there? What's stopping you from being there? Right? Very good question. So I think people need to kind of pay attention to that, ask themselves that question, And if you're in a situation where you're someplace you don't want to be, make the fucking best out of it. Truly. Side note on a tangent. A lot of people, especially here in the Sacramento area, we overhype the Bay Area. and again, I'm from the Bay, so I can say this, where the Bay Area is a beautiful place. It's gorgeous. I love it. I would not want to be anywhere else if I had a wish. It's the shit, right? But I live in Sacramento right now. There's no difference between Sacramento and the Bay Area if you think about things to do. Honestly, truly. Now, I know that's going to make a lot of people kind of give me the stink face at their phone or their radio because they're like, fuck you mean? There's nothing to do with Sac. What can you do in San Francisco? What can you do in Oakland? What can you do in San Jose? What can you do in Palo Alto? What can you do in Walnut Creek? What can you do in Pleasanton? What can you do in Livermore? What can you do in Richmond? What can you do in Santa Rosa? What can you do in Vacaville that you cannot do in Sacramento? Think about that. What can you do there that you cannot do here? It's the same. Weather-wise, it's hotter here. Absolutely. Take your ass to the river. Right? I haven't been out there in a while, but you can always go to Folsom Lake. Right? So, there's lots to do. Like Southern California is really big on beaches. Like you go to the beach and kick it. You can go to Folsom Lake and do the same exact thing. Yes, the ocean and the lake are two different types of water. I get it. But a boat is a boat. Take your ass on a boat, sunbathe, get drunk, have a good time. There's nothing you can do there that you cannot do here. It's just not known. So you might have to become the life of the party and create a buzz for yourself. Another reason why I choose to come back to Sacramento and stay here to establish my brand in this city. Right? I think it would be a gold mine that could rival LA and the Bay Area. Again, you may laugh at that, and that's fine. But if you know how to think outside the box, you can say, you know what? It's a lot cheaper here than there. I can get more space for money than I could either one of those places. You know, we could turn up. We could make it to where someone from the Bay Area would want to travel to the Valley. You know what? We may have something. So it's kind of one of those things, you know, wherever you happen to be at, either appreciate it or be the change that you want to see. Right? So, last thing I want to talk about is women's sports, right? And I know people have an opinion about women's sports, especially with this Brittany Griner situation that's going on. Touch on that topic real briefly. The Brittany Griner thing. You know, she had some vape cartridges with hashish oil over in Russia. So you can kind of look into the story yourself and make your own conclusion. But for me personally, I think she was wrong for doing it. I think it was a situation where she's done this before. This wasn't the first time. For whatever reason, someone tipped her off and she got caught. So it will be an extremely bad look right now if the U.S. brought her home. Do I want her to come home? Absolutely. But here's the situation. The reason why, well, a perspective of why they didn't want to make any big deal about the Brittany Griner situation being over there in Russia was politics. And everybody wants to talk about keep politics out of sport. Listen, baby, politics are in everything. It just depends on what level of politics we're talking about. But politics are in everything. Can't escape it. You just cannot escape it. The United States did not want this to get out because apparently there's an arms dealer, a Russian arms dealer, I believe he's a Russian arms dealer, that Putin wants returned. So he's basically saying, okay, you want her back? Give us back him, and you can have her. He's sitting back, from my understanding, from what I have heard and what I have read. He is enjoying this because of all the pressure that's being put on the U.S. government for her to get back. is going to make Biden look bad if he does it. It's going to make him look extremely bad, because it's almost like with Brittany Griner's situation played right into Putin by saying, we have one of theirs. Okay, good. Let's see how much they want her back. And so, again, to apply pressure, coaches, NBA players, fellow athletes are speaking on it. It's making us have to make a decision. If we don't do anything, it's going to make us look like fill in the blank. But if we do something, then it's going to make us look like fill in the blank. Because he's going to want this for that. Well, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Okay, then don't give them back. But that means that she ain't coming home. Again, how is that going to look? It's a very tricky situation, but it's political. That's the reason why nothing's being done. And that's another reason why nobody wanted this to come out. And so now it's like, oh, okay. It's an unfortunate situation, man, because I don't know if you guys ever been to a Russian jail before. I haven't. But I knew some people who've been into a Mexican jail before. And from what they have said, the rats who come into their cell have more freedom because they can leave. So that sucks, right? Also, I didn't know this, that the law in the state of Texas is way more severe when it comes to possession of marijuana or cannabis than in Russia. Now, I'm not saying that this is a good look for her, but again, it's like, damn, bro, like, as they say in the hood, well, this is a pickle, right? You don't like, where do you go with that? So I want to touch on the Brittany Griner situation because I do want to get into the female athlete. The way the world is going right now, the way sports are changing their whole dynamic, the way sports are changing their whole outline to be more safer, to protect the players. Do you see a female football player? Personally, in the next 10 years, I do. Now, when you think of football players, immediately you're going to go to like defensive lineman, offensive lineman, linebacker type position, right? No. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about you might see females playing skill position, wide receiver, defensive back. I can see that happening, definitely, because it's more of it's a free ranging position. There's not as much contact until it's contact. You know, linemen are constantly hitting each other. Defensive, offensive linemen, right? You're always going to have a dog pile every single snap. Linebackers, there's a 50% chance of a dog pile. Defensive backs, you're typically one-on-one with the person. So it's kind of one of those things where maybe you get a female wide receiver and you draft a female cornerback, right? And so therefore it's woman on woman versus man on woman or woman on man. Not saying that can't be a potential, quote unquote mismatch, because you get mismatches with certain corners and receivers on each other all the time. But maybe the league is going to start going into drafting these positions versus that position eventually, and then you'll start seeing women drafted in the NFL. I do see it. Absolutely. I do. And I know there's a lot of people who are not going to like that shit. They're not. I get it. They already have female leagues. Now, these female leagues are, I'm not going to say that they're not serious, because these women be knocking the shit out of each other. But they're the league where like the women are wearing like the tight tights and the sports bra, the shoulder pads over the sports bra. So cosmetically, it's fun to look at. But it's like arena football too. I honestly see that happening in like the next 10, maybe 15 years or so. They may start off with a kicker, right? They may start off with a female kicker or a female punter, just to kind of get, the toe in the door. But I honestly do see women skill position in the National Football League. I swear I do. I do. The NFL is so big, it can afford to attempt that. And if it doesn't work, no one's going to doubt them or question them because it's the NFL, right? But I do see it. I do see it like in the next decade. Hands down, no question. I think it would be extremely interesting if that happens. But there's going to be a huge amount of people who get turned off from it too. They will. I got into a conversation online about my support for the WNBA. I support the WNBA. I supported the WNBA 20 years ago when it first dropped. Now, I'm a football fan, I'm a basketball fan, and I'm somewhat of a baseball fan. But listen, I haven't been to an A's game in years. Does that mean that I'm not a fan of the team? I haven't been to a Warriors game in a few years. Does that mean I'm not a true fan of the squad? Right? I haven't been to a Vegas Raider game. Does that not make me a Raider fan? I don't understand the philosophy. So their question is, whether you're a true fan of the WA, was the last time you went to a game? Again, of the three major sports here, I haven't been to a game in years. Do I lose fandom points for that? My team was the New York Liberty. Teresa Witherspoon was the baddest point guard I ever seen play during that era. And I had a crush on Lobo, who was like their power forward center, right? Northern California's own Christy, I'm trying to draw her. She's on this local sports talk station every now and then. Hutchinson. Katie Christensen is her name. But she played in the WNBA, and she's from a small town called Likely, which is up by E.I.T.H.R, small country town, right? She's in the WNBA. The thing is, when Sacramento had the Monarchs, I was a Liberty fan. And yes, I watched them on TV. Okay? I remember when Cheryl Swoops was the first WNBA player to dunk. I remember that. Lisa Leslie, I'm sorry, not Cheryl Swoops. Lisa Leslie. And there was a lot of iconic moments at that time, but it's women's sports, right? Who really pays women's sports attention, quote unquote? So when the Sacramento Monarchs won the championship, it was like, so they won a championship, and that's the team you dismantled. It kind of proves certain teams are just too big, in my opinion, are too big to fail. You just can't. Certain sponsors and corporate, they're not going to let certain things go. They just won't do that. So it kind of was like, damn, if I knew the Sacramento Monarchs were going to get dismantled, I probably would have went to games just on GP, because they brought a championship to the city and y'all got rid of them. That kind of shows people what the city feels about women's sports, right? So those folks, you really shouldn't be crying about it, because you didn't really even give a damn about it at all whatsoever. But I pay my respect to these squads. I understand it. I get it. I may not be a die-hard WNBA fan, but what's the difference between the big three, right? I remember hearing Ice Cube mention, the NBA has their issue with the big three. And he's like, I don't understand why. We're a completely different product, right? The big three is of NBA players who are believed to be past their prime. But the big three is where they can still come out, show out, and have a good time and entertain and give the fans something. It's very nostalgic. Like, these guys still can play, and they're having fun doing it. So, are you a fan of the big three? Have you been to a big three game? I think some people, man, they find something to complain about because the masses complain about it, and they just really want to stick with that. You feel me? So, I looked into, like I said, the people that I was a fan of, they're gone and not in the league anymore. So I kind of fell off from watching the game because, well, there's no team out here. And I get caught up with my stuff, or my businesses and everything that I'm trying to do. I don't have time to go to a sports event, period. But I am looking into, I was talking to my friend in Ohio, looking at either a Seattle team or a Las Vegas team. Like maybe I want to go back to, maybe a West Coast team this time. So I'm thinking more of the Vegas Aces because my Raiders are there. So I can go see a Raider game and go see an Aces game and come back to California. But again, do you see women entering the NFL? And it kind of goes back into what has been written has always been written. Should we rewrite it? Like, are there certain things that are just natural? Can they be adapted? Can they be revised? If it's not broke, don't fix it. Well, define broke and define fixing it. You know what I mean? I tell you this, for anybody who feels that women's sports are, fill in the blank. And my buddy didn't answer this question. What would you tell your daughter if she picked up a basketball and said, I want to go pro? What would you say to her? Nah, baby, you can't play pro. You're a girl. Girls don't go pro. No, don't do that. Play tennis. Is that what you would say to your child? Anyway. We'll come back on Friday at 3:30 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the E.I.T.H.R. and we out.
Hi, this is Clarissa with Zipology, and we have a fantastic selection of tea, teaware, and various other items. Currently, we are offering a huge 25% off sale with Christmas in July. Come check us out on Facebook at E.I.T.H.R. That's E.I.T.H.R.
Hello, my name is Candace Romero, and it has been my absolute privilege and honor to be teaching people about doTERRA's essential oils for the last 9 years and helping people live their most vibrant life. If you'd like to learn more about my natural solutions, please feel free to contact me on Facebook at Bay Area Terra Tribe Essential Oils and Natural Solutions, or check out my website, my.doterra.com/Romero. That's my.doterra.com/ROMERO.